Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Connect Health Tech panel discussion on hybrid events, unlocking the potential of your content and creating a success. I'm Paula Rogers-Brown, Business Community Manager for Connect Health Tech, and I'm passionate about developing tools such as our Connect Health Tech online community and events of all types for connecting people, knowledge sharing, and communicating science, technology, and engineering for our professional and public communities. Hybrid event formats, while it's not a new concept, but it's becoming more critical to event organisers worldwide. It's been exactly 2 years now since COVID-19 forced physical events to stop, and organisers everywhere have navigated the uncertainty the pandemic brought, pivoted events to an online format, and we've all learned valuable lessons along the way. So I'm really delighted to chair this timely event today and engage you all in some lively discussions for the next hour. We have plenty of time for questions later on, so please do put any questions, thoughts or comments in the chat facility. Now, in this event, we will explore the evolution of events over the past couple of years. How can we harness those lessons learned, and how can we meet the new expectations of event attendees to ensure a positive and engaged experience? Our panel of experts will share their insights and experiences, discuss the challenges and opportunities, and look at the technical aspects to consider for seamless events and networking and what to look for in physical venues. So I'd like to introduce our panel today. We have Judith Sloan. Judith is head of Meet Cambridge, the conference and event bureau for the city. With over 16 years experience in the industry, Judith has a wealth of experience and knowledge about the facilities available across the Cambridge city for meetings and events. We also have Nikki Mann. Nikki is the Digital Communications Manager at the Milner Therapeutics Institute, which is a founding partner of Connect Health Tech. Nikki has over 20 years experience in events planning and comms. Nikki organises the Milner Annual Symposium, which has previously welcomed over 500 delegates in person. And this year, in June, we will see the first Milner Hybrid Symposium, blending together in-person and online attendees. And we also have Chris Watson. Chris is co-founder and director of Venue AV, who offer a wide range of live event and video production services. Chris has over 15 years experience in the industry and has supported over 100 virtual and hybrid events since the pandemic began. Thank you all panel for joining us today. So just for everybody joining us, the format for the next hour will be each of our panelists will give a short perspective on how events have evolved, and then we'll follow by some discussion on technical aspects and physical venues and adapting successful events, and then we'll open up the floor for Q&A with the attendees, where I hope there'll be lots of questions. So again, please put your questions and thoughts in the chat facility. So let's move straight to our panelists to get their perspectives. Judith, over to you.
Thanks, Paula. I think, like everything and everyone, Meet Cambridge and the business events business has been such a roller coaster these past 2 years. Our first casualty actually happened 2 weeks before lockdown, when a large international association event that we've been working on for a long time had to cancel. It should have actually taken place during that first week of lockdown. What followed then was a series of cancellations and postponements, no new event enquiries as such, but a monumental amount of enquiries regarding cancellations and contracts. We switched from a venue finding and marketing organisation to a crisis communications agency almost overnight. Thanks to our affiliations with organisations such as Visit Britain, the Association of Professional Conference Organisers, and the Meetings Industry Association, we had a quick route to clarifications on government guidance, and boy, did we need it. We quickly became the go-to place for our clients and for the colleagues in our venues. We had high hopes for 2021, but we all know where that story ended. And now we're here in 2022, in what I believe is a hugely exciting time to be working in events. The pandemic has forced the industry to re-evaluate event delivery, and I've got massive respect for all you event organisers who had to switch to virtual overnight. And what we're seeing now here in Meet Cambridge is a huge pent-up demand for in-person meetings, for dinners and celebrations. In fact, February was actually busier in terms of the number of enquiries received, bigger than February 2019, which was our last, what you would call normal year. So tapping into industry conversations, delegates seem to be desperate to get back to those face-to-face interactions and to experience an in-person event again. But with so much uncertainty still in our world, hybrid would seem to be an excellent option. And I'm so pleased to say that our venues have embraced this really well, with many of them investing in new technology or forging new partnerships with local AV suppliers. I know that we're going to come on to talk about the key aspects and considerations of hybrid. But as events evolve in this post-pandemic era, I think we also have a lot to consider around the new demands and expectations from Gen Z and Gen Alpha as our digital natives. There'll be legislation coming out about carbon usage and travel, and of course the metaverse, meetings between avatars and holograms, where you can probably walk on the grass too. My sense though is that I'm happy to be proved wrong, is that there's no technological substitute yet that can offer the same opportunities as an in-person event can for those chance meetings in the coffee queue or those serendipitous encounters that spark new ideas. And of course, the experience of sharing food and drink with other humans.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Judith. Let's move on now. Nikki.
Yeah, thanks, Paula. Thanks, Judith. So yeah, I was sort of thinking of the evolution of events over the last couple of years, and I've got about 3 minutes to do it. So 2 years in 3 minutes. I'll do my best. So I guess the first thing to say that I noticed when the pandemic hit, and we immediately realised we can't hold in-person events right now. I think the first thing I saw was an initial lull. And that's where there was sort of a drop in events where people are going, well, what do I do? Do I cancel this event? Do I postpone this event? I've got no idea how long this is going to go on for. So what's the best option? And after that short sort of initial lull, I think then what I saw was people get their heads around it and go, okay, enter Zoom stage left. And I think that's when I saw a shift from this sort of, as I said, this lull to an acceptance that events would and could and will then, go online. And at the beginning of the pandemic, that looked very different to the way it looks now. So online events then were very simple, right? I mean, Teams worked very well, Zoom worked very well. And for many events, they still do work very well. But I think what delegates and organisers found is that once they started to get a little bit more, I guess, comfortable with online events and realised that they were here to stay for a little while, then at that point there was another shift. And the next shift went from acceptance to enthusiasm. And what I mean by that is at a certain point, we saw a difference from, okay, we'll have to have this on Zoom, to right now, how do I make this event even better? How do I make this online event work better? How do I do something that nobody else has done before? We'd got to a point where we'd seen everything a million times. So what do I do that's a little bit different? And not only that, but I think delegates started to become a bit more enthusiastic as well. So all of a sudden, it's like, actually, this is really convenient. I wouldn't have been able to make this event before, but now I can join it online. And that's, I'm attending things that I wouldn't otherwise have been able to attend. So now we're at a point where we're able to move back to in-person events. And as Judith pointed out, people are now really hungry for it. They want to get there and see each other in person. And I'm dead excited to get to our symposium in June and see people, in real life again. But interestingly, we've chosen to not revert back to our sort of pre-pandemic model. And as Judith just mentioned, hybrid events, that's exactly what we're planning to do, to allow our delegates to register to attend at the venue or online instead. So it's the same event, but with two different sort of routes of access, if you like. And there's several reasons for that. I'm sure some of them will come up throughout this session, but I think the crucial thing to remember now, in my opinion, is that when we're organising events from this moment on, we mustn't forget the sort of loyal delegates, online delegates that we had, throughout the pandemic, and remember that removing the convenience of online events might be the difference between people joining or not joining your event. More to come.
Good point to finish on there, Nikki. Really thought-provoking. So yeah, we will definitely come back to that. Chris, on to you now.
Thank you. And yeah, really interesting points made by Nikki and Judith there. From our perspective, we're a Cambridge-based sort of AV company. And although we've been doing live streaming and sort of somewhat hybrid events for many years for some clients, yeah, interesting situation when your entire year's worth of order book just cancels within the space of about 2 weeks, and you know, panic starts to set in amongst the industry. But actually, you know, I think it took about 2 weeks of quietness before then clients were in touch with us saying, look, Chris, we've still got these 13 conferences we want to deliver this year or over the next 18 months. And unfortunately, Zoom doesn't cut the mustard in terms of, you know, poster sessions and networking and, you know, the sort of documentation that supports our conference. And we want all of that in one place and easy to access. So we set about very quickly developing a virtual event platform that sort of built on what we were already using. And you know, I think because we're quite Cambridge centric and we kind of understand the sort of events that happen within the sort of Cambridge ecosystem, we've been very successful with that. And you know, we've learned a lot of lessons over the first sort of few events, and we're able to sort of just keep working away and improving things. And you know, even down to the warehouse and the offices that we occupy near the railway station, you know, we sort of had to move a lot of racking and equipment that would normally be going out into clients' venues and build a studio room with booths for all of our technicians to work sort of socially distanced from each other. And you know, it's a very sort of intense period of time. But I think we've all learned, you know, just how expansive an event can become if you open it up to so many people. And you know, what there was one example where the client asked us to put on a virtual event for them, and they expected about 400 people maximum, and they ended up with 4,000 people attending. So you know, you never know, but they were absolutely blindsided by this. And you never know really sort of how expansive it can be until you try. And I think that's a good thing now that we can do hybrid events again, is, as Judith was saying, people want to meet, they want to, you know, eat and drink together and have discussions and see each other's reactions and things. But also, you know, the convenience factor for some people who have families or work a long way away and you know, might struggle financially to attend a conference with the cost of flights and things, they're able to join in too now. And I think, you know, I think hybrid's here to stay. We're certainly really pleased about that, because we can put our best foot forward in both fields and sort of join everything together. But I think what I've learned is, you know, having the right kit is one thing, and you know, that's fantastic. But actually, just working with people who understand your type of event and understand how that they can sort of, you know, seamlessly sort of integrate online audiences and in-person audiences together. I think that's going to be key, and that's certainly what we sort of, you know, aiming to sort of continue to develop our sort of skills in that area. And yeah, that's pretty much it really.
Great points there, Chris. Great. And you know, what's come through as a common thread there is with all three perspectives is talking about that delegate experience. We've all traditionally been quite used to that in-person attendee, whether we've been organising the events ourselves or attending something, and you know, there's no getting away from that physical contact. You know, networking, they say, is you know, traditionally has been a contact sport, but we're moving into a new sphere of things. So Judith, I just want to come to you first of all about that delegate experience, and what are the types of things in terms of physical venues that people watching today and you know, attending right now this panel event, what are the types of things that they should be looking for in physical venues to try and probably not recapture that old experience, but to meet those new expectations? What are the sorts of things we should be looking for?
Good question, Paula. I think one of the key things would be finding a venue that can cope with the technology that you need for the event, but also looking at the physical aspects of the room. So if you want the remote audience to feel part of the event, can they see the in-person audience? Is there room to have cameras and what have you in the room that would make them feel part of the event? Will they get a perspective as a delegate in the room, looking at a stage, for example? And then also to have, I guess it would depend on the format of the event, but areas, quiet areas where in-person delegates can go and talk to online delegates, because that's quite difficult to do in a big room. So to have areas where you could step outside, booths, for example, that type of thing. And I think that will obviously help with discussions and networking as well.
Yeah, yeah. Nikki, do you have a view on the types of things that you think you'll be looking for, you and the Milner team, when it comes to physical venues going forward? And what's your experience been in actually looking for a venue for the symposium coming up?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's quite difficult actually, because the in-person event is quite large. So we were, up to 500 delegates, and we've been at West Road in, I think it was 2017, 18. And then in 2019, we moved to the Corn Exchange in Guildhall because it had just become too big. This year, because we've gone hybrid, we've actually scaled back on the in-person. There's still so much uncertainty that you still don't know how many people will want to travel. You don't know how many, whether companies will allow it, and we don't know if things are going to change all over again, right? So we've gone back to West Road Concert Hall, which is actually a really fantastic venue. And we've joined up with Chris and his team, funnily enough, from Venue AV, to offer that hybrid event. So this time it was really thinking about, okay, we need to pick a venue that I know has enough space that people can feel comfortable, because that's now really important with social distancing and how people
Absolutely.
feel.
Yeah.
And also enough space that you can get an entire AV team in, because it's no mean feat, right? Streaming out to a lot of people, if you want the experience to be good, they need a lot of space. They got a lot of stuff. I've seen it firsthand, I know. So that's definitely something to sort of take into account. And when it comes to networking, I think space is crucial, because people need to feel comfortable and sort of safe and confident in that environment in order to be able to get to that point where you can have those sort of serendipitous discoveries and meetings. So I think it's really about finding a venue that everybody feels comfortable in, that there's definitely enough space that you can fit Chris's entire team into, and also that looks nice on camera, because if you're holding this hybrid, it's got to look nice as well, right? You don't want it to be all sort of dingy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's true, nobody wants to feel hutched up in a venue at this particular point. And it's a really valid point you've made there, Nikki, because COVID's still with us. So in terms of planning future events, it's something that we should all be considering. I think Chris made the point in his perspective, hybrid events are here to stay, and probably because that level of uncertainty is still with us for the foreseeable. Just to bring Chris in on this point, and because Nikki touched upon kit and the technology side of things, Chris, and it just makes me think about, in terms of physical venues, from that technology side of things. What are the things that you are seeing within Venue AV that people are looking for? What is their understanding of a hybrid event, even? That, what does that look like from the technical perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting point, actually, because a hybrid event is as little as a Zoom call in a small boardroom sort of style setup, to doing as we did a few weeks ago, working in Brighton at their 4,500 seater sort of venue, doing a hybrid event in there, where of course we had 5 or 6 cameras sort of flying around the room, sort of in different locations, and there's a crew of 8 people. So it's really anything from a laptop with a webcam right up to sort of a full sort of comprehensive rig. And I think what we like to do is think that we can sort of just listen to the client and understand, well, what do you actually need to achieve from this, and you know, how can we make it a good quality experience? And actually, you know, as Judith mentioned, a lot of venues around Cambridge have invested in some kit to help them deal with their sort of day-to-day requirements for maybe less formal meetings and you know, internal meetings, and that's a fantastic thing. So what we're finding is, you know, we're doing a lot of it, our installation side of our business is doing a lot of camera installations and fixed installations in those types of venues, but actually people are contacting us who need to put something together that's a little bit more high profile, perhaps a little bit more important, that it's got all the polish and sort of smoothness, and actually sometimes that is just a case of, you know, a one person crew with a couple of you know, robotic camera, remote control cameras placed at the back of the room, and just mainly just some experience, you know, the fact that we do this sort of week in, week out. And I think that's what the client's looking for. And generally, I think the venues really understand that. So they're quite happy to say, okay, once something gets beyond this sort of point, you know, that we can deal with our installed sort of equipment, you know, then we're quite happy to stand back, give these guys an internet connection and let them, you know, use as much of their kit as possible. Of course, you know, we'll certainly integrate as much of the venue's own kit into the solution as possible. But let us sort of take it forward and sort of, you know, support these slightly more larger scale events or slightly more sort of critical events. But generally speaking, you know, there's not many venues we can't work in. We can sort of tuck ourselves away in a sort of a remote room if we have to, if there's no space in the meeting room for us. Of course, it's nice to be in the room where everything's happening, but you know, it's really interesting to us, and actually we enjoy that. You know, as technicians, we relish that challenge of you know, try and do an event in this location, you know, and that's a challenge to us. So we're quite happy when we're challenged in that way. But there's always a way to do everything, really.
Sure. Just on that point, you mentioned it, Chris, and I just had a little light bulb there. In terms of connectivity, because that is critical to a hybrid event or any digital type of event there, is there anything that, you know, attendees today should be thinking of in terms of when they're seeking physical venues? And Judith, you've probably got a perspective on this in terms of internet connectivity, bandwidth, etc. You know, it's going to be sucking up more if you've got loads of attendees live with you with the in-person element. How does that get managed?
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. And I think we're quite lucky. Certainly, if we're talking Cambridge, you know, the city is quite well served for infrastructure for network these days. So it used to be, when we first started doing live streaming sort of 10-15 years ago, you had to jump through many a hoop to be given a wired internet connection, like the holy grail of streaming. And you know, over the years, that request has become more common, and therefore, you know, IT departments have realized, oh, actually, we have to get on board with this. It's no good just saying no and hoping the problem goes away. So generally, it's very uncommon now to have a problem with that. But in the odd sort of times that we have been provided a venue by a client who can't move that venue, and the venue genuinely can't arrange internet, then we just bring in a satellite internet van. It's a lot more, it's a significant cost, but if there are reasons why a certain site has to be used, there's rarely a situation where it can't be overcome. Unfortunately, it's usually impacts the budget, unfortunately. But you know, extreme lengths can be gone to if required. But generally, not so much of a problem, but certainly should be on anyone's sort of when they're going to look at a venue, going to talk to a venue, you know, can we have wired internet access for our crew to run this stream or to run this hybrid, you know? And I would imagine that 9 out of 10 times it'll be an immediate yes, no problem.
Yeah.
Paula, I was just going to add there as well, just also to consider the environment where the people that are logging in from is also the infrastructure that your viewers are going to have is really important as well. So depending on what you're actually presenting out to them, is just to have that in mind, consider how they're going to be receiving the information and ensuring that their supplies, their broadband is good and can keep up with what you're delivering.
Yeah, great point there. Judith, just sticking with you on that, what sort of common questions are you seeing coming through Meet Cambridge regarding venue inquiries? Is it things like, you know, internet connection, and generally just what are the types of common questions that you're seeing now?
It's actually one of the challenges that we're facing at the moment. Everybody wants to do hybrid, but everybody has a different, like Chris was saying, a different idea of what hybrid is. It could be as simple as a Zoom, or it could be you know, the other end where it's a full production. I think the challenge for us is that at the moment the organisers may not know how many remote delegates they're going to have, how many remote speakers they're going to have to live stream in. So having an idea of the programme will definitely help. It will help the venues quote for your needs, and if they need to work with someone like Chris, it will help the brief to Chris as well. So knowing whether or not you need to live stream, if you have, how many speakers you have, where the speakers are going to be, and elements like polls and questions and quiz shows, that type of thing that might be part of the actual event. All of those require different elements. So if that information is presented to us when they're trying to find a venue, that would absolutely speed up the process.
Yeah,
that's probably point one when you're coming to, you know, when you're starting thinking about an event and how it's going to run, is all of that stuff Judith just said. You need to think about it actually really right at the very beginning, and you can, you know, it's very easy to overcomplicate an online or a hybrid event. You have to really think about what is it we're trying to achieve, and that can be loads of different things, but from a delegate experience point of view, make a massive difference. So if there's a ton of information that needs sharing, you know, symposium or conference booklets, for example, that can't be a standard Zoom, right? It can't be, because then how do you disseminate the information? Or maybe it is, but then you've got the Zoom call and you've got emails and so now you've got things in different places.
Yeah.
So you really need to think, if you've got a whole ton of information that you want people to be able to enjoy, then maybe some sort of online platform where people, you know, the online delegates can log in and all of the information is in one place. That's something that can really affect that delegate experience. So I think, just going back to what Judith was saying, it's all of those, thinking about what your event is trying to achieve and what your delegates need, and you know, what you can give them that will really help them get the most out of your event. Do that at the beginning before you go any further.
Yeah.
Oh, and can I just slot something in there actually, because just on a very practical point, something that is often we're finding overlooked when clients are looking at venues to hold a hybrid is it's quite common for people to forget about how long this sort of thing takes to set up and test and be completely ready. So whereas before, you know, let's pick a hotel just as an example. You know, if you had a conference that started at 9 o'clock on the Tuesday morning, it's not uncommon for a hotel to say, well, you can set up from 7 o'clock that morning. And actually, when you're doing something hybrid where there's lots of things to tweak, you've got to interface with a network for, you know, that's provided by the venue. Actually, it's quite important to find out from your supplier, how long is your setup going to take? Are you able to do it the morning of the event? Because actually, most good companies will want to do it the evening before or the afternoon before. Now, that may incur an additional cost onto your event, but actually that is priceless in terms of ensuring a sort of successful delivery. So, you know, it's certainly something that I've had to, you know, discuss with Milner about their event coming up this year. You know, when do we get our time to make sure this is all set up just so? And so if you can bear that in mind when you're looking at venues and speak to them about that right from the outset, then that can be really useful.
Actually, Chris, that's good for you, but it's also good from an organizer perspective, because it takes an immense amount of pressure off. There is nothing like arriving to a venue, you know, 2 hours before and realizing that actually there's not enough time to set things up. So actually, by planning in advance and doing exactly as Chris has just said and making sure you've got enough time, you help them, but ultimately you help yourself, because you're going to have a much nicer day, and you're going to be able to you're getting off on the right foot, and you'll be able to sort of facilitate a much better event that way.
Yeah.
I'd also maybe add as well, obviously we're talking about planning and looking at objectives and what the delegates need, but also making sure that you have sufficient in the budget. for the hybrid elements. I think sometimes that's not considered. So just thinking carefully about the budget would help maybe decide on how far you want to take this, knowing what budget you've got and etc. So I think that would be a useful tip.
Yeah, great take homes, really great. I just want to circle back to the delegate experience and something, Judith, you mentioned in your short perspective. And really, it's something that's, I suppose, coming through quite strongly of the next generation, those digital natives you talked about, and the metaverse. Now, this all sounds to me a little bit like gamification of stuff. So can you expand on that and what you meant by taking into account the next generation and what that means, what that can mean for organisers?
Yeah, I think, even just in the pandemic, we've all got so much more used to watching things on screen, to taking part in things on screen. And I, as you can probably tell, I'm not Gen Z or even the other one. So probably can't speak on behalf of them, and they wouldn't want me to. But I just think there's going to be another level of expectation. And I think at some point, conferences and events are going to need a production level at TV standards for some events, because people will just have high expectations of giving up their time to attend that event. And that is a really particular skill set. And Chris, I think you alluded to that earlier, is having that whole TV presentation mode, someone that can facilitate and involve two audiences. That is a really, really challenging, and it really requires someone with a good skill set. In the industry at the moment, we're talking a lot about the metaverse and people building virtual conference spaces in the metaverse where people will come and attend an event as an avatar. It's all very sci-fi for me, but I don't. And they say that in the next 10 years, we'll have to get used to more technology than we've had to in the last 30 years, I think is what they're saying. So it'll be interesting to see who's going to claim these metaverse real estate, and have the first convention centres. We've always wanted a big convention centre in Cambridge. Perhaps we'll have one in the Cambridge metaverse, who knows? But I think it's something to bear in mind. And I think there's another train of thought that's saying actually our broadband and our bandwidth here in the UK wouldn't be able to keep up with that level of demand. But who knows? Everything's changing so quickly. So yeah, we'll see.
Nikki, just to bring you in there, is any of that sort of resonating with you? Are those sorts of the things that you've been considering for maybe not this Milner Symposium, but future ones, how to really aid networking potentially in that metaverse space?
Yeah, so two things to note really. So the first one is that right at the beginning of the pandemic, again, when we were thinking about, okay, we're going to move this event online, what does it look like? You start looking at these online platforms and what's available, what you can find. And I had a demo with a company who showed me this online space that they'd created, and it really was, as Judith just said, it was like a convention centre. And it's not virtual reality with the old headset and all of that, but you click yourself around, you go into different rooms. I think at one point I was in the kitchen where they were making the lunch in this convention. So it was very, very high tech. A lot of information there, and it was fantastic. I mean, it was brilliant. There was so much you could do with it, but it was so big that for me, I'm going, okay, my delegates are going to log into this. Okay, but where's the screen? Like where are the talks taking place? So for us, that was just a no. And I go back to my point earlier about you can very easily overcomplicate things. I mean, that would have been a massive amount, probably in over 50K's worth of budget just on a platform before you've done anything, so you have to bear all of that in mind. That said, we did use I don't know what you call it, a platform, Chris, help me out, called Spatial. What do you call that?
Yeah, so that's so that is basically sort of turning your webcam and microphone, turning you into a little live avatar really, and allowing you to move around, and as you get near people they can hear you. As you move away from them they can't anymore,
Yeah, that's right.
And just it's free movement basically around an environment that's browser based effectively.
yeah, it was about as close as we were going to get to networking for our symposium last year, where it just wasn't, we weren't allowed, we just couldn't do it in person. And as Chris says, yeah, that's right. You sort of, you log in online and you drag your little avatar around. And we even had in one of the rooms on there, we had a band playing. So you could, you know, people could talk and interact and you could chat to different people, but you could also go in and see a band. And it was sort of trying to find, you know, novel ways to keep people interested and make this networking experience a bit more exciting, because again, people were hungry for it by that point. Like, we want to see people, and this is as close as they could get. But what I will say about that from a networking point of view is that it's impossible online to have that organic flow of conversation in the way that you would have it if you were next to each other in a physical venue. It's just different. So I think if I had my time again with an online networking event, such as, you know, using something like Spatial, where you're dragging your little avatar around, I think I'd probably introduce sort of themes or topics so that there are sort of deliberate things for people to talk about, to actually spark that conversation in the first place, to then hopefully lead to you know, some interesting conversation later on.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's a great place to pause there, because we'll pick up some elements, I'm sure, with as we move into the Q&A with attendees. Again, folks, please put any questions in the chat, and I'll have a look at that as we move on. So I'll kick off with a question that's sort of at the back of my mind. Now, really, I just want to explore what practices or measures can be used in a hybrid event to avoid digital fatigue, particularly if you're dialing in. You know, you're one of the remote attendees. What can we do? What can we implement in that hybrid event so that people just don't feel as though, oh my gosh, it's quite monotonous and I've been sat here for 3 hours? Nikki, let's start with you. And
I knew you were going to do that to me, Paul. Yeah, I mean, that's really difficult. So our first online symposium, again, beginning of the pandemic, no rules applied at this point. We could make it up as we went along because organisers were new to it, but so were delegates. So you had a bit more sort of, you know, you didn't have any experience in it, but at the very least, nor did anyone else, right? So we had our symposium split over several weeks, actually. So whereas our in-person symposium is one day with a programme, talk, Q&A, break, talk, Q&A. At first, with our online symposium, we split it. So on one week, we had a talk and a Q&A. And then maybe 2 weeks later or a week later, I can't remember now, it was a talk and a Q&A. And that certainly helps in one sense, right? Because it's only an hour that people have to put aside. So that helps with the sort of digital fatigue that you talk about. But actually what we found was that it doesn't necessarily bring people together in the same way it does if you're doing it all at once. So for the second symposium, which obviously then by that point we had the sort of benefit of hindsight and we had a bit of experience and we could ask delegates what they actually wanted to see and they knew, we held it all on one day. And I think the thing that's important is obviously to have gaps between your talks. Don't go completely back to back. People need coffee, it's a fact. And have it sort of working in a way that you would do in person. And imagine that people still need to go, you know, they still need to pop to the loo and they still need to make a drink, and actually just think about what it's like to be sat there, make sure there's enough space. And, you know, maybe if your event has different elements to it, maybe shake it up so that it's not talk. Maybe it's a talk and then a panel and then something else. So sort of just shaking it up a little bit so it's not all one and the same. One and the same.
Yeah. Judith, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so a couple of things that I've heard that people have done, apart from having the breaks, I think that's really important, is being able to replay some sessions so that people can watch them on demand, especially if they're in a different time zone. So to have the ability to do that is quite useful. And an example I saw recently was an association event, and they created a quiz show format, and it was an Olympics game, where they used information that had been disseminated throughout the conference as quiz questions, And then they pitted the different continents of their members together. So there was the USA versus Europe, for example, in a kind of Olympic style format. And apparently that got everybody really engaged, but it also helped to share the knowledge in a slightly different way. So it wasn't sharing the knowledge just by looking at a screen, being told something. It was very interactive. So any events, anything like that, where you can encourage participation, I think would work and would break up the, you know, the presentations. I think the on-demand thing's really interesting as well. And obviously that'll extend the life of the event as well. If you have that content captured during the event, it could be uploaded onto a conference platform as an archive. So that's really important.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just jumping in there as well. I mean, I think I can definitely support Judith in that, because what we've found, on demand has always been a big part of what we do, but actually we're being asked to provide that on-demand content quicker and quicker and quicker. So before, you'd have an event, you'd record everything, then you'd take a couple of days, edit it nicely, you know, take out all the pauses and breaks and things, and then it would go up for on-demand viewing. And what we found is that, you know, people are really interested in us shortening that process to the point where, you know, we've got an actual editor at the venue, or, you know, if it's virtual, just they're sort of collecting those recordings in and ingesting them in real time, so that we can immediately edit them and publish them on the same day, you know, within an hour of the end of that talk, bang, it's online. And that's become more and more popular, even at a cost. You know, people just want it sort of immediately ready to go.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Chris, that immediacy of content. We are quite used to it now with technology, in just having instant access, whether it's, you know, through our streaming TV services, etc. So yeah, why wouldn't we want those expectations in our conference and seminars and so forth? So I mean, that's a really interesting point and take home for people, is in considering if you're going to record sessions within your event, is how quickly can you then push them out the door as on-demand content. That's a really, yeah, good point to note there. We do have a question in the chat, and here we go. Did anyone experience technical issues on the event day? How did you overcome that situation or react? Nikki, we'll start with you first.
Yeah, I was really racking my brains then, just trying to think whether there were any technical issues.
Yeah, experience any technical issues on the event day, or how did you overcome that situation or react?
I mean, I honestly, for our symposium, I can't think of any technical issues. And we have had with some of our online seminars issues where you know, someone's Wi-Fi is down at the last minute, and there's honestly really very little you can do. If somebody's, you know, if it's the speaker, for example, then there really isn't anything you can do. But I'd say always make sure that you've got a backup. So if, you know, if something, particularly if it's completely online, you know, you've got no other choice but to press ahead, to have backup. So to have a colleague or somebody that if something went wrong, they would be able to just, you know, pick it up for you and sort of run with it.
Yeah.
One thing that did just occur to me then, okay, for the symposium, it wasn't a technical thing, but actually we had a speaker who, for one reason or another, it was a time issue, couldn't make it at the time that that we were expecting them, and at the last minute you have to make a call of what to do. But actually, you know, you think about those things in advance, and if something like that comes up, you simply, you know, when it was an online thing, you put a note up to say that there's been a slight change of plans. You make you plan for the how you're going to replace it, or how you're going to you know, what the time it's going to be later when you put it on. You let people know, and the key is communication. So as long as you're sort of communicating with your audience to let them know what's going on, I think that's that sort of helps with that.
Yeah.
I think also, you know, being demanding of you know, the companies you're using, the venue you're using, you know, what have you done to mitigate this, you know, a power loss or an internet issue, you know, because there are things you can do to mitigate those problems. And even at speaker level, you know, when we did the Alzheimer's research one, there was a question mark over whether someone could make it. So we just pre-recorded their talk just in case, you know, and they made it on the day and it's fine. So that pre-recorded talk will forever just be a backup plan. But, you know, we had it there just in case. So, you know, it really depends how high profile the event is and as to how far you want to go with those sort of preparations. But, you know, I think as people organising events, you need to be demanding of your venues and the people you're using to help you deliver the event as well, because just because it's gone right 100 times doesn't mean it's going to go right the 101st time. And it's actually the professional's job to mitigate those issues as far as humanly possible. Obviously there's always going to be, you know, things that can't be overcome, but actually most of them you can plan for.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff. I think people have warmed up now. More questions in the chat coming through. I think we'll start with Judith on this one. How are event venues adapting to hybrid events? For example, needing to upgrade internet connections, refurbishing to look better on screen, etc. So that's an interesting point. So Judith, how's that going from your perspective?
Thank you. So what I'm seeing is our venues have, over the last 2 years, looked at this really seriously, and by I say our venues, I mean the Meet Cambridge portfolio. There's been huge investment in upgrading the in-room technology, and as we've already discussed, the broadband and the internet speeds tend to be quite good in most of the Cambridge venues, I have to say. I'm not aware of any venues at the moment that have the kind of TV studio set up, but I'm sure it's not too far off. And we do have some of the most amazing backdrops if you do want to kind of impress your on-screen delegates. But I would just say, you know, talk to the venue, tell them exactly what you want. In most cases, you can achieve that with clever lighting and very simple screens. So I would, discuss that with the venue, and like Chris said, there's usually a solution, and I'm pleased to say that quite a lot of the venues are already working with Chris, so I'm sure that would all go down quite well.
That's great. Okay, let's take another question here. So imagine you organise an event to which 100 people are registered to attend in person and 50 will attend online, and you end up with A, 150 people showing up to the venue, or B, on the evening before, 50 of the ones who are going to be attending in person asking to join online. So that's a bit of a switcheroony there. People switching their thoughts from, oh yeah, I was going to attend in person, but now I'm going to attend online, and you've already catered and sorted out your space and seating for 150, 100 in the room. Oh my goodness. How are we managing that? Nikki, let's start with you, and then we'll go on to Chris to think about the technical aspects of that.
It's a really good question, and I think it's one of the things that when you start planning a hybrid event, you almost you don't think about that until you start looking at your registration page and then think, actually, how are we actually going to achieve this? So what we're doing is we're allowing our delegates actually to switch their own, or request to switch their own tickets between digital and in person. And what we'll do at a certain point is cut them off so they won't be able to anymore. And I think the most important thing when we were setting up, so for us, we did it with an Eventbrite page. When people are registering, we've made sure that the wording and the text around the ticket types is very, very clear. So not just on the page when they first do it, but actually once they've clicked and they've gone through the basket process and they've got the ticket on the screen, it tells them, and then they get an email to tell them again, you have registered for this type of ticket. And closer to time, as I say, we will stop that. So we'll stop people being able to do it, because at a certain point you've got to know, right? You've got to have your numbers particularly for the venue. At that point, then emailing your delegates again to make sure they understand which type of ticket they've got. So what I'm saying really is, even if, some people might have been hoping to attend in person and by then they can't because there's no tickets left. Even if there's some sort of disappointment there, just making sure that everybody is informed, so that ahead of the event, they know exactly what they're supposed to do, where they're supposed to go, either online or in person. Just make sure that everybody's really clear on that. If they show up to the venue on the day, I mean, quit, go home, or you could I think, depending how many people have shown up, whether you are aware that people have cancelled tickets so there are going to be spaces, I think depending how many, if 50 people showed up, I really would have, that'd be a bad day. But if you had a few, I mean, if you've got space, for me personally, for our event, I would want to allow them to attend in person if I could.
Yeah, and you should always expect walk-ins with an in-person event anyway. There'll always be some that very quickly, I did sign up late last night, and they just turn up on the day. So it's one of those things, but you said 50 would be an awful lot in a very short space of time.
That would be a difficult day.
Oh my gosh. Chris, how would you support that type of switch around though, in theory?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the great thing about hybrid, isn't it? Because I was actually thinking of Milner, their very first symposium, when they had a venue booked, and then they ran out of seats because it was too popular. So they had to book another venue across town. So we ended up live streaming from one venue to the other. Well, actually, if it's hybrid from the outset, then, yes, there's a cap on how many people can come in person, but there's no cap on how many people can attend virtually. It's scalable. So it becomes, you've got an alternative to offer rather than just saying, sorry, it's full, and that's fantastic. So yeah, I think it's a huge opportunity really for sort of, getting as many people into the conference as possible. Yeah,
really great point. Okay, another question here. Do you have any ideas about how to help those online and in-person attendees interact, so that online attendees are not just passively watching along? So how do we get that interaction between our in-person attendees and online attendees? How do we get them to interact? Or, here's my thought on that one, not. Do you treat them differently? Let's start with Judith on that.
Yeah, thanks, Paula. I have actually got a view on that. I think in the early days of the pandemic, when everything went online, we were sharing an experience with everyone across the world. We were all locked down in some sense in one or the other. And I think that's changing now, is that actually, as we get back to normal life, we want to pick and choose what we want to do online. And I do wonder now if there's a case for a delegate is a remote delegate by choice, not by necessity, and they might not even want to be part of that in-person event. They might just want to consume the content. So I think it's more about finding out what your delegates want from the very start, your online and your in-person, and then coming back to your event objectives. What do you want to achieve? Because I think there was a lot of kind of forcing this interaction, but actually, if that's not what they want, if they just want to be a fly on the wall, then you're not delivering for that delegate. So yeah, so I think things might change just from a few events that I've actually done myself. And I found it easier because I'm on a laptop and work's inbox is popping away in the corner that I can dip in and out. So who knows, we'll see.
It's interesting, Judith, what you said earlier about the was it a competition, where people were sort of voting. So things like that give people an opportunity, online delegates, an opportunity to interact or not. So it's almost sort of the best of both worlds. So if you were to do a sort of, a Slido, like a place a vote or a poll or whatever, people in the audience can actually vote for that. And actually people at home can vote for that as well if they want to, but they don't have to. So I think things like that are a really nice way to give your online delegates the opportunity to decide for themselves if they want to. As Judith says, not everybody does. Some people just want to turn up, get the information they came for and leave again.
Yeah, no, that's a really fair point of using things like live poll capabilities or utilising breakout rooms you've touched upon before there, Nikki. So giving people that choice of whether they do interact or not. Have any of you had the experience where it's been where they actually have tried to put the delegates together for online and in person and fostered some type of interaction there. Have you had that experience or come across that before?
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Chris.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it is the hardest nut to crack. We've been trying to crack that nut for 2 years now, and we're sort of having, you know, mixed success. Sometimes it's just dependent on the event. You can do the same approach on 2 events, and one of them is hugely successful, and one of them will be, you know, people just don't want to interact. Excuse my webcam, it shall return. So yeah, it's a really tricky one, that, but actually, I sort of agree with Judith in as much as sometimes it's too messy to try and sort of merge the 2 together. So what we've tried to do is just put together some really simple tools that people can actually just reach out to people really. So, you know, if we're making a web portal for an event, we have in-portal messaging, so people can just send effectively a conference text message to anyone, whether they be in person and they're just using their mobile phone to do this, or they're watching from home and it's on their web browser alongside the live stream of the talks, you know, and at least then they can arrange to maybe jump on a call together, or they can, you know, a group of people can start messaging each other and arrange to sort of meet up in something like Spatial. So sometimes you can just put something really simple in place just to allow people to reach out to each other, but you don't necessarily have to create a sort of hybrid world of, you know, where everyone can do everything with everybody, you know. Yeah. And also a lot of our clients, they want that to be a USP of attending in person, because they want people at the venue, they want the speakers to be speaking to full rooms of people, and actually, you know, a lot of people are willing to pay a premium for that and attend in person. So, you know, it works for some of our clients that the online people who are probably paying a little bit less don't get as much access to speakers and things like that.
Yeah, I think there's value in looking at both ways, isn't there, as to some interactions possibly through polls, etc., where people have that choice to interact or not, and also looking at it from that, well, in person is in person, and that's the experience you're going to get if you attend. And if you're an online attendee, this is the type of experience that you're going to have, and looking at them, you know, separately, so that they get equal experience, but in a different way within the same event. There's value in looking at it from both aspects there. We're just coming to the close now. Let me just check the chat. Okay, no further questions. So any final thoughts? I'll come to Judith first, and then we'll go around the rest of the panel. So Judith, any final thoughts about hybrid events?
I agree. I think they're here to stay. I think the possibilities are exciting, the opportunities to extend the audience. And then something we didn't really touch on is just the opportunities to capture the data as well, on delegates, interactions, that type of thing, and the longevity of the data and the recordings that can be, you know, taken at an event can certainly extend the life of that event as well. So yeah, very exciting times ahead, I think, and it'll be interesting to see how they develop.
Lovely, great. Nikki?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about it. I love gadgets, and I love all things sort of technical. So for me, having a hybrid event is really cool. It's the best of both worlds, and I think it's definitely, as Judith says, and Chris said earlier, it is here to stay. I guess my key advice really for other event organisers is don't be afraid to ask other events organisers or other people you know have arranged conferences for advice. It's sort of crucial, because particularly within the university, but further than that as well, many people end up organising events that actually aren't events organisers. They might be, you know, from administration or from, I don't know, a completely different background. It might be a researcher, but they've got an event that they need to organise. Just don't be nervous to reach out and talk to people, because the more you can learn from other people, the more you can get in place before your event, the more you can pin down exactly what you want to achieve. And if you start off on that foot, you're much more likely to have a successful event.
Right. And finally to you, Chris.
Yeah, I think I'd just say, look, you know, similar to Nikki, really, reach out to experienced people, you know, and remember that there's so many ways to do, you know, hybrid, that it can work for so many, most budgets. There's hardly any budget that's too small to do something. And, you know, as long as the quality's there, you know, don't spend that. If you've got a limited budget, don't spend it on bells and whistles, spend it on getting the basics right, even if it's just someone who knows what they're doing, you know, or whatever. And that isn't just a sort of shameless sort of pitch for us, for anyone, you know, even if it's someone from another organization or a colleague who's been there and done it, just get them involved. And also I think challenge us as well. If you are using a sort of a provider like us, challenge them, try something new, ask them to do something new for you, have some ideas, and you know, just because they're not doing it now or no one's done it yet doesn't mean it's not a fantastic idea and shouldn't be explored. And we love that, you know, if someone comes to us and says we've had this idea, we immediately all sit up and go, oh brilliant, something new to, you know. And so yeah, do that.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. And on that note, I'd like to thank our panel for joining us today. So thank you, Judith, Chris and Nikki, for sharing your knowledge and giving some great insights and take homes. I hope everybody that has attended has enjoyed the panel and got some great insights and great take homes from this event. So, and thank you also to the Milner team who've been in the background there, who supported the logistics for today's event. And so thank you everybody for attending, and I hope you found it valuable, and we'll see you soon.